Thanks very much, Malcolm. I'd like to echo Malcolm's words of thanks to everybody here tonight, to our speakers, to our guests, a number of whom I know have made great efforts to be here, particularly to Chris, Louise's brother, who's flown in from Morocco, Malcolm himself, who was trapped on the other side of the channel only earlier today, and to others who've made considerable efforts to be here tonight. Thanks also to my fellow trustees who have helped us get to this point, and of course to the college for its kind and generous hospitality this evening. Looking around the room tonight, I feel rather humbled and overwhelmed. Not for the first time in the 20 months since Louise died. The circumstances in which I find myself all seem rather surreal. It's been a strange journey. I've been catapulted into a new and abnormal life. It's one not of my choosing, but it has led me to the most unlikely of places. And this evening is the culmination of the most important of my objectives after Louise died, to give practical form to an initiative which would honour her in the way in which she would most like to be honoured, not with words but actions. Louise was always the doer of the two of us. While I stood on the sidelines and talked a good game, she rolled her sleeves up and got stuck in. Driven by her innate interest in people and her desire to help them resolve their problems, all she wanted to do was to make a difference to the lives of others. She cared passionately and saw beauty and potential in everybody, even those in whom others saw only ugliness and hopelessness. It was for this reason that I could confidently give her nothing for her 40th birthday, her last. No diamond ring or lavish party. Nothing other than a large donation in her name to a hostel for the homeless. And I could do that knowing that she would be thrilled with it. And it is for this reason that I knew from the outset that I would have to do something in Louise's name, which would enable her to continue to make that difference. It could have been in aid of any one of so many causes close to her heart, but I never had any doubt that it should be this. Louise was an inspirational and gifted doctor, utterly dedicated both to her profession and her patients. That commitment to the needs of her patients led her to spend long hours at the end of a surgery reviewing and reflecting on earlier consultations, checking and double-checking, looking for an angle that she may have missed. It caused her to spend hours drafting representations to other agencies seeking to support her patients, even when she knew that it would be to no avail. It was also why Louise was always looking to improve herself as a doctor, spending large proportions of her days off and weekends on professional development activities to try and make herself the best that she could be. It's no wonder that her patients consistently described her as the best doctor that they ever had, and remarked time after time that she always listens. But what those patients didn't know was that while Louise was conscientiously guiding them safely through their own crises, she intermittently battled with her own. I have a fundamental problem when I talk about Louise's illness and death. It means talking about her depression and anxiety, her diagnosis, albeit one that she sometimes challenged, of bipolar disorder. To those who didn't know her, and to those who don't understand mental illness, it might easily create a picture of somebody who is weak, vulnerable and needy, somebody who is tired of life. I hate the fact that Louise will be forever defined in some people's minds in this way, because it simply wasn't her. She loved life with a passion. When she was well, which was the vast majority of the time, she was the happiest, most vigorous, energetic and vibrant person I've ever met. And I have to be clear that Louise did not suffer from her illness because she was a doctor. The fact that she was a doctor did, however, ultimately make her more vulnerable to its effects. Those long hours didn't help, of course, nor the pressure of working in the austerity-era NHS, or the burden of being expected to fix so many social issues which went well beyond medical need. Louise often described herself as being as much social worker as GP. But it was much more than that. There is a sense in which many of those same values and attributes that made Louise such a good doctor in the first place are themselves risk factors. The commitment to her patients, the strain of being so present to them, of listening so intensely, empathising so much, is emotionally exhausting even for those who are well. Where there is a predisposition to mental illness, that exhaustion can trigger or deepen crisis. The reserves of energy Louise needed to fight her own battles were all expended elsewhere. There is too, I think, for Louise and so many doctors, something of a dependency on their job, a need to be needed. Once her purpose was taken away from her when she was off work on sick leave, Louise found it extremely difficult to fill the void. And if the nature of the job makes doctors more susceptible to episodes of mental illness, it also means that they can find it harder to obtain appropriate support and treatment. As a Londoner, Louise was fortunate to have access to specialist support from the PHP, but perhaps understandably the local psychiatric services were simply not set up to deal with the rare complexities presented by a doctor as patient. I saw at close quarters the challenge Louise faced of navigating an appropriate relationship with other healthcare professionals and the lack of local care pathways that take account of the particular needs of those with deep insight into the system and are capable of providing proper challenge. Louise knew the questions that would be asked of her and the answers that would satisfy them. Louise was at least lucky enough to be well supported by her practice throughout her period of illness over the years. But this isn't always the case, and both the profession as a whole and patients are often deeply suspicious and unforgiving of doctors with mental illness. There is fear of the consequences of admitting the need for help, and until now, outside London, few places where the specialist service is able to provide that help exist. So the medical profession faces a unique challenge when it comes to safeguarding its own mental health. The problem may often be hidden from view because, by its very nature, it's a private darkness. But it's real. I've lost count of the number of doctors who have contacted me to tell of their own struggles and their own near misses. And those able to tell of their story and to tell of their own near misses are the lucky ones, because Louise's death is consistent with a sad pattern. Figures are difficult to obtain, but rates of suicide within the profession appear to be significantly higher than the norm. A female GP, for instance, is reportedly 3.5 times more likely to take her own life than the average person in the street. This may not just reflect the prevalence of mental illness, but might also have something to do with the fact that doctors, at the point of crisis, find it easier to take the final step. They're habituated to death in a way that the general public isn't. Louise certainly saw it as simply a necessary and practical means of ending the pain. And having reached that point, like all doctors, she possessed the knowledge to ensure that she was successful in her aim. I welcome signs that the problems are now better recognised within the profession, because change is required not only for the sake of doctors and their families, but also in the interests of the health service. It makes no economic or clinical sense for its most precious resource to be put at such risk. Louise was a brilliant doctor, and in many ways she was all the better for her personal experience of mental illness, the insight it gave her into the struggles of so many of her patients. But she is now lost to them and to the NHS, as well as to me and the rest of her family. It is desperately hard to make any sense of suicide, to bring any meaning to what seems, to those not themselves in the grip of depression, to be a completely illogical and wasteful act. But Louise sought all her life to help others, and my hope is that through this foundation she will continue to be able to do so even now. If we can help make a difference to the life of just one doctor, and by extension to the hundreds of patients that they will be able to go on to help in turn, then Louise's death will not have been entirely in vain, and she will have the legacy that somebody of such beauty, bravery, compassion, wisdom, generosity and intelligence so richly deserves. Thank you.